Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with the prophetic Charles Coulombe.
Prophetic? Did you say prophetic or pathetic?
Prophetic.
Prophetic. Golly, I hope not. I hope not. Because all the prophecies I've got right now are Debbie Downer specials.
Well, things that have happened already. We keep getting comments on old videos that we've done 4 years ago where you predict civil unrest and then, people taking matters into their own hands. And I think we've seen that recently when no one really would predict that.
Well, I just know history and I know how people are. I know how people really are as opposed to, endless yapping that we get from our lords and masters. And I know our country pretty well, better than most because I've seen more of it than most. And it's really not rocket science. It's just understanding the way people are likely to respond. It's not 100% foolproof, but if you know how people are likely to respond under given stimuli, then it's not difficult to predict how they're going to respond. And when people are presented with a lawless situation, eventually you get vigilantes. That's just what happens. If the unrest has a certain amount of either tolerance or even support by those in charge, then you get regime change, because, see, the vast majority of people are conservative with a small c. They want to be left alone. They don't want to be beaten. They don't want to be starved. They don't want to see their houses ruined. I know what you're saying. What's wrong with them? I get it. But nevertheless, this is the way they tend to be. So if you leave them alone, they'll take a lot out of you. A lot. They'll take cutting off federal aid to schools that won't allow boys to use girls' locker rooms. They'll take abortion. They'll take gay marriage. They'll take all kinds of stuff. If you leave them alone in terms of their everyday lives. And, you can slowly boil them like frogs and they won't notice. The problem is when you call havoc and unleash the dogs of war on them, then they get upset. Then they get riled up. And this is what's happened. I mean, the current crop of moronic leadership we have is much stupider than their forefathers were, their parents and grandparents, both ideologically and biologically in many cases. Because those guys knew how to boil a frog. The current idiots, they don't know how to boil frogs. They don't understand that when you heat up the water really rapidly, the frogs jump out. And if those frogs have access to weapons, you've got a problem on your hands. Especially if you tell your security guards they're worthless.
I had an admission before we did the show, and you said I should bring it up because it's worth noting. Well, the admission is I've never actually voted Republican. My dad had registered me as Republican, but I've never voted. I think I voted in one of the elections. I voted third party, but never voted Republican. But this election, for the first time, I'm going to vote Republican. And it's not even for Trump, even though I think he's done a pretty good job. It's not for the betterment of the state. It's so that I can do this. To all these crazy, evil people. I watched Biden for the first time, really, in a long time, do some stupid speech 2 days ago. And I couldn't stop screaming at the television. I decided, I'm just going to very calmly get through this election cycle and very calmly place my vote. And basically, my vote, the way I see it, it's like writing a letter to somebody and not mailing it and then burning it.
Especially in a national election in California.
It's not going to change anything. It's not going to do anything, but it's my screw you to these people who are just so out of touch with reality. I mean, Biden has one foot in the grave, and he is so audacious with his lies and his rhetoric. In some ways, it's more egregious to me than Hillary Clinton, because this guy claims to be Catholic. You know, a thought had occurred to me earlier where, you know, he gives this double speak about abortion, right? That he's personally against it, but can't, you know, feels you can't do anything, you know, for it legally. What's preventing him from speaking up and defending Father Sarah? You know, or any saint. Or how about Father Damien?
Oh, that's different. That's different. I mean, he's a Kennedy Catholic, 0.02.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to write a desperate letter to the Pope once he's on his deathbed, asking for a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Well, didn't work for the Kennedys apparently, but you know, I'm, of course, not only will I be voting for Brian Carroll, but you'll be happy to know you heard it here first. The American Solidarity Party have nominated me as an elector.
What does that mean?
It means that in the extremely unlikely event that the American Solidarity Party carries California, I will be one of those lucky people sent to vote with the Electoral College. That's what it means. Every party has to have electors. Every party that's in an election. Yep, now you know.
That's so you. Because in a certain way, it's meaningless, but in a certain way, it's a nice symbolic gesture that you yourself appreciate, I feel.
Well, and not only that, as I told the gentleman who contacted me from the party, I said, boy, being an elector in Central Europe, maybe I could go to Frankfurt and vote for the emperor.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's where we got our Electoral College, you know, it was from the Imperial Electoral College.
We don't like to think those thoughts.
Well, tough. So what I need to do is go to Frankfurt, go to the chapel where the electors would gather to vote for the emperor, and wait for the others to arrive. It may be a while. I may be sitting there sometime.
It's like that meme of the skeleton waiting for.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can have a meme of a skeletal me waiting for the imperial election.
Somebody do that. That's pretty good.
Well, as I say, I'm an elector and I'm in Central Europe. What more do you want? Of course, the other thing, I asked him a few questions. One of them was I wanted to know if there were co-eds at the Electoral College.
Why?
And I want to know if there are co-eds or if it's a guys-only school.
What does it matter? A vote's a vote.
Well, yeah, but I mean, are there frats at the Electoral College? Cheerleaders?
I don't know.
I want to be true to my school, just like I would to my girl. You know, the Beach Boys had it right.
Wait, what song?
Be true to your school.
I haven't heard that one.
Well, be true to your school, just like you would to your girl. Be true to your school now. And so that's how I am for the Electoral College, my new alma mater, next to Patrice Lumumba Friendship University.
What?
Patrice Lumumba Friendship University.
What's your relationship to that?
I sometimes, when people want to know my educational background, I'll claim that I'm an alumnus of that great institution.
Where is that?
Moscow.
Why do you do that?
Because I like seeing people's faces. Why do you think? I love the looks on their faces when someone says, so what's your educational background? Calling into question my right to write about anything or to have opinions. And I'll say, Patrice Lumumba Friendship University, 1982. Which it was a college that was basically put together by the communists in the Soviet Union to train third worlders in communism. The looks I get are really delightful.
But people generally don't know what you're talking about, right?
Well, usually lefty sorts, liberal sorts, who try to push me, well, they'll know.
They would, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and now I'm doing graduate work at the Electoral College. I haven't gotten my BA at Patrice Lumumba.
Wow.
What?
Oh, it's wonderful, Charles.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's great. Break down all the barriers. Bring it all together. I think it's time we just stop separating things and make everything one.
That's like your Buddhist joke. What did the Buddhist say to the hot dog vendor? Or what? Yeah, make me one with everything.
That's right. Absolutely. I understood how he felt. If I ate hot dogs, I'd do the same thing.
What's new, Charles? What's going on in your world?
Well, there are whispers all over Europe of the dreaded second wave of corona.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I've got a real problem with this, other than the fact that my travel opportunities are being cut off again. I'll tell you what it is. At the get-go, to explain to us why things would not improve when the weather warmed up, they made it very clear that corona is not affected by the weather. It doesn't matter if it's hot or cold.
Yeah.
Now, the whole idea of a second wave comes to us from the flu, from influenza, and of course the great pandemic of 1918, 1919, which was in fact affected by the weather. So you had a second wave. Now, if this stuff isn't affected by the weather, where's the second wave coming from?
We're just trying to make it as bad as possible for each time. So it's not weather related. In other words, summer's not going to help us, but then it is weather related, so we're going to get the second wave.
So summer won't help, but winter will harm.
Yes, exactly. You're getting it.
Okay. This is great. All right, I understand now. So in other words, our summer's shot because of the virus, and so's our Christmas because of the virus.
Right, yeah.
And as the numbers in the hospital go down, restrictions have to increase.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. As you said before the broadcast in regard to Joe Biden, they don't have the right to be that stupid. They don't. So, I mean, I have, and I think everyone who's hearing this or who has read my tweets or Facebook on the matter will admit that I have maintained a careful neutrality about the measures that have been brought to deal with this. Because I don't pretend to be a doctor and I don't pretend to know. But I know what I don't know. I know what they've been saying. I know that their stories contradict each other. And that's what upsets me. It's like the thing with the mask. I mean, probably if I hadn't had 3 months of being told that the mask won't help, and then going through this weird kabuki, this ritual to show my submission. We go into restaurants here, and again, I don't mind it. It's not that annoying. But, you've got to put your mask on when you go into the restaurant. You take it off when you sit down. And what's that actually supposed to do? It's going very swiftly, I'm afraid, from actual fight against the disease to mere bondage and discipline, dominance and submission with our rulers in our various countries. And I can understand why, because they don't really know what they're dealing with, and they're very much afraid to appear as though they don't know. So they've got to, whatever they do had to have been the right thing. And I've had friends who died of the COVID. I'm not going to tell you it's a myth or it's not real. But I tell you, at the end of the day, if everything we've been put through this year ends up not having been justified, there's going to be a lot of unpleasantry added to the unpleasantry that's already there.
My big pet peeve is the jargon that our leaders are using, where they're following science and data. That is such crap. So what they're doing there is they're invoking science the way certain clerics invoke the Holy Spirit. Like, oh, I'm guided by the Holy Spirit. Oh, I'm guided by science. Oh, I'm following the one true path that science leads me to. How about let's change some words so we can change what you're really saying? How about we're analyzing the data to the best of our abilities? That would be a more fair term. See, because when you're analyzing, it's not one true science. Because when people say science, oh, it's science, that means, oh, I'm right. I'm inherently right because... No, use the word analysis. Because, see, analysis is fallible. You see? Right now, the truth of the matter is we're using bad analysis off questionable data.
Yeah.
Both things are bad.
That gives us bad stuff, but they can't admit that, you see. They really can't admit it. And, the supreme horror is that so much of what we've been put through was based upon the predictions made by the team at Imperial College in London.
Yeah.
But their projections have been completely erroneous. So the truth of the matter is, our masters don't really know what they're doing. And I'm naive enough to think that if they said as much, we put our trust in these things, and it just hasn't worked out the way we thought it was going to. I think they would get a much more sympathetic hearing than just pushing on or doing things like Bloody Mary Garcetti in L.A., cutting off water and power to party houses. Where does he get the authority to do that? The city charter, the state constitution, the federal constitution? Or does he just pop it out of his nose like some cocaine?
Doing some research into the state government of California, what's going on there. There are currently 30 lawsuits against Gavin Newsom, a variety of things. And what I also discovered is that the California state legislature went off on vacation for 4 months.
Oh, well, that's good. I hope they're being paid at least.
Can you believe that? Like, oh, okay. I'll see ya.
Ah. So we have a one-party state without a legislature.
Yeah. Can you believe
good.
that?
Not only can I believe it, I hope it will be remembered at the next election for the state.
And everything's focused so nationally that nobody even knows that. I have to go into some obscure, research to
State of California stuff.
Yeah.
Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, if you're in a state like that, you know you have one recourse: vote them out. Vote out your assemblyman, vote out your governor. Obviously, these people need to be on the unemployment lines like everyone else. It doesn't mean that what will replace them will be better, but will send something of a message. So, for heaven's sake, it's not lost on me that the two largest states of the Union, California and New Mexico, California and New York, with the two largest cities, Los Angeles and New York City, feature the two stupidest governors and the two stupidest mayors. There's something really wrong here, ladies and gentlemen. Really, really wrong.
And we keep wondering whether there's going to be a shift to the right, if people are going to vote the madness out. And part of me says yes, trusting in the common sense of people. But part of me is also very scared and wonders if there is common sense in the people. And one of the politicians that makes me wonder in this way, cynically, is AOC. How could she get voted in? How could people be that stupid?
Well, I'll tell you. The day that I was born, John F. Kennedy was elected president. Now, to be fair, the dead rose to vote for him in Chicago and Texas, and without that, he wouldn't have won. But nevertheless, for many, many Catholics across this great land of ours, voting for Kennedy simply because he was Catholic was a thing. And they did it. I'm happy to say my father didn't, because he was a New England French Canadian and they hated the Kennedys. But by and large, that was how it was. People who feel a tribal connection to a candidate will very often vote for it, no matter what kind of scum they are. Look at Tip O'Neill, or my personal favorite, Father Drinan in Massachusetts. Jesuit priest, the most pro-abort voting record of any congressman. Jesuit priest.
How come that tribal thing never happens when the person's a conservative?
Well, I'll tell you why that is. It is because, I hate to say this, but people who vote conservative, quote unquote, generally put a little bit more thought into it.
Yeah.
I don't mean to say that people who don't are stupid. I don't mean that at all. But
That's
I mean
okay
to
to
say
say, because they are.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I'm sorry, but if you tell me, because I've talked to in California said, we need to get a Mexican governor. Like, well, what type? Well, any type do? That's what I wanted to say to this person. Like, what? Okay.
Well, that's the thing. But I wouldn't call him stupid. I call him severely misguided, and dare I say it, ignorant of the higher questions. To put this another way, politics ought not to be about me and my interests. It ought to be about the common good.
It reminds me of the Peter Kwasniewski meme, where he says, "Progress is getting what I want."
Yeah, which of course it's not. And I mean, I don't want to pat myself too much on the head, but the reason why I always vote against bond issues, even if it's for something I really agree with, is that I don't own any property. I don't pay property tax.
Yeah.
So much as I may want that library, and you know how I am about libraries, it's not for me to do it, because I'd be spending someone else's money. I don't pay property tax. So I really shouldn't have a voice at all in bond issues.
Yeah.
But we're not, beyond identity politics, there's the politics of envy. It's all about me and what I want, and I'm not getting. And it's rot. I mean, mutatis mutandis, I remember the first time Obama ran, and they interviewed this lady and asked her why she's supporting him. And she says, Obama going to pay my rent and fill my refrigerator. And I thought, madam, you have no business voting. It wasn't just the sheer selfishness, but the sheer ignorance of the statement. No president, I don't care who they are, will ever pay your rent or fill your refrigerator. You know? How stupid are you, madam? Pretty stupid, that's for sure.
It's on par with the insurance thing, right? It's like people want things and they don't understand that material goods cost things. It's like the rioters and looters. Oh, well, they're insured. As if insurance companies can't go bust.
Well, see, what it is that they think there's a big money machine somewhere.
Yeah.
And the man gets it. And all they have to do, if somebody's looted, the insurance company will draw into the millions that rich white people have as a group and pay off the shopkeeper. But you know, it's interesting that in Minneapolis, where all these guys were burned out, they got anywhere from 1 to 10 grand from their insurers.
Yeah.
But the city of Minneapolis raised all of the ruined buildings. And they turned around and charged the shopkeepers 108 grand apiece for demolishing what was left of their burned out stores. So what happens to that insurance money? I mean, these people have no idea of how the world works. They have no idea that there's such a thing. Well, I take it back. I remember in the white culture thing that the Smithsonian had, that one of the typically white ideas is cause and effect. So probably I'm projecting this because of my white privilege onto the objective world. But it does nevertheless dovetail with my observations in life. Cause and effect. Always, always, always. If you shoot your cow, you may have steak tonight, but you'll never again have milk. It's just the way it is. And if the steak runs out, you say, well, where's my milk? You ate the cow, you're not getting any milk. Oh, well, that's racist. Well, okay.
And that's actually true. I mean, that's like a perfect metaphor.
I appreciate how you feel, and I agree that certainly it's not pleasant to have no more milk at all. Well, why don't you get me another cow? Well, I might consider it, but you shot the last one you had and ate it, and it was a dairy cow. So I don't think I'm going to give you another cow because they're very expensive and they cost me a lot of money. Well, you were racist. Actually, if you were white trash, I wouldn't give you the cow either. If you were an annoying Latino or Asian or anybody at all who killed the cow, who killed a dairy cow instead of milking it, I would not give you another cow. It's not happening. Yeah, well, you gave it to the Koreans. Yes, I know I did. And you notice that their cow is grazing peacefully and gets milked every morning. And they drink their milk and are very happy with that, which is odd because Koreans don't generally drink milk. Nevertheless, these do. Yeah, well, then why don't you give me one? You gave them one. I did give you one. Well, yeah, but it's dead. Yes, I know. You shot it and ate it. Well, yeah, but I was hungry. You don't get steak off of a dairy cow. But we did. We ate it. It was great steak. A little thin and tough. Yes, it was thin and tough because it was a dairy cow. I don't really think you understand the way this stuff works. No, I understand. You're racist. You're holding it against me. I think this conversation is at an end. Have a nice day.
I think this whole thing is going to get put down. I don't know if I said this in a previous episode, but I'm pretty sure you said it's going to get put down.
Uh,
But I changed my opinion when I saw they were doing the guillotine in front of Jeff Bezos' house. And Jeff Bezos is a liberal. And you've got these crazy liberals basically assaulting Jeff Bezos. And, and so does stuff like this turn the liberal elite? Because to me, this isn't socialism. This isn't civil rights. This is anarchy. And anarchy threatens the powers that be. And when the powers that be are threatened, whether you're liberal or whatever, you put the threat down.
Well, you would hope so. But the revolution eats its children on the one hand, and on the other, those whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad. I mean, what kind of a moron talks about defunding the police when a city is going up in flames?
We've been reduced in our projections and our hypothesis. They're contingent on self-interest now. And things have gotten so crazy that we can't even predict whether powerful people, are going to act in self-interest.
No, we can't. That, you see, you've heard me say before that our leadership class are not just evil, but they're insane. And insanity, in a political sense, doesn't mean you've got a split personality or something. What it means is that your ideology is not only opposed to reality, but you prefer it to reality, and you act as though it were true, regardless of the consequences to you. It's bad enough if your subjects get screwed over because of your idiotic ideas, but that happens. When you yourself suffer because you won't admit the fact that the drivel in your head isn't real. I mean, it's what destroyed the Nazis. That insistence that the way they saw the world was true, regardless of all the evidence. I always use the example with them of the Eastern Front and how defeat was snatched from the jaws of victory. They were crazy in a political sense. And then add to that the fact that in common with their subjects, the current generation of leaders are also ignorant. They're stupid. They don't know anything, really. They only know what they think they know, which is nothing. Again, they too are the products of these so-called educational institutions, which don't teach them anything. They don't know anything. We touched earlier, I think, in the pre-show, on Russia. People talk about America's inherent enmity toward Russia. Yeah, well, do you know what role Russia played in the Civil War?
No.
Well, Tsar Alexander II, like everybody else in Europe, identified the crisis of the conflict in terms of his own experience. He had liberated the serfs in Russia. He considered Lincoln his comrade as the liberator of the slaves. And so he sent Russian squadrons to San Francisco and New York as a warning to France and Britain that if they came into the war on the side of the Confederacy, Russia would come in on the side of the Union.
Okay. Makes sense.
It does make sense. Of course, the big mouths that rule us, they don't know any of this, you see. There's just, we have this ancestral dislike of Russia. No, moron. No such thing. What we had was the Cold War. What we had was the opposition to communism. But there is no ancestral hatred between us. There is no reason at all for Russia and the United States to be at loggerheads. Now, mind you, I'm not saying Putin is a great guy because I don't know. As with the Nazis, a lot depends on whether his rhetoric is sincere. And I don't know if his rhetoric is sincere.
Okay. Well, since our blood is up, let's leverage this into another talking point. So I just heard today Pope Francis is going to have an encyclical. We haven't talked about matters of church in a while. What do you think about that, Charles?
You know, I really haven't thought about the Holy Father since the prayers in the rain night back in March. It's been comfortable. I mean, I've thought about various annoying bishops and so forth, but I haven't had to think about the Pope.
One thing you wanted me to bring up, which was patrons sometimes they leave, and when they leave, there's sort of an exit survey where it's like you can list reasons why you left, and one of the reasons that multiple patrons have left is that watching the show, it would seem as if everything's all right in the church. That we suppress our emotions, that we don't rant, we don't talk enough about how bad things are in the church. What do you think about that?
Oh, God help me. What do I think about that? Well, I'll tell you what I think about that. I lived through the post-Vatican II revolution. Okay? I was abused by the Immaculate Heart nuns because I opposed their dropping the habit. I have lived with this stuff for over 50 bloody years. I want that to sink in. 50 bloody years. And more. I have shed my last tear and vented my last spleen. They're not going to get any more out of me. By they, I mean the oft-times substandard leadership of the church. Because if there's anything I've come to realize, the church is not about her leadership. She is about her sacraments. She is about being the means of grace, whereby we are able to escape this hellhole, the trap of being human, and spend eternity in heaven. And that hasn't changed. Not in all the 2,000 years of the church's history. It's harder sometimes than others, I'll grant you. And now is not a particularly easy time. When the shepherds are a bit cray-cray, as happens from time to time, it gets much more difficult for the flock, no doubt about it. But the realities don't change. Any pope can say any stupid thing he wants. But our Lord will still come down on the altar every day. All Saints and All Souls are coming, and Christmas, and New Year's, and Lent, and Easter, and Pentecost, and we go through the whole round again and again and again, and all that's going to happen, whatever the Pope says, whatever the bishops say, whatever the priests say. The better ones will align themselves to those realities. The stupider ones will fight them. And that's been the case. That's been the case since the apostles fled the garden. So I'm sorry if I'm not upset enough. I'm sorry if I'm not constantly denouncing churchmen. But I would rather praise the good ones there are and hold the rest in quiet contempt. than jump up and down about
it. Impromptu question from me. We just received a comment today on our video, is Pope Francis an anti-pope? And the commenter said, Charles dodged the question, as always. What do you say to that?
No, he's not an anti-pope. Is that a clear enough answer for you? He's not an anti-pope. Sometimes I'd be very happy if he were.
Why is that?
Because he's annoying, and he comes up with all sorts of ridiculous statements. He never qualifies anything. He babbles endlessly. I don't like the man, but I don't have to. The Holy Ghost made him Pope, not me. I die for him. I pray for him. I love him in a particular sense. I don't care for him. I don't like him. But I don't have to. I didn't like Paul VI either, and he was a saint apparently. I will always be grateful to Francis for canonizing Saint Junipero Serra, and if he beatifies Queen Isabella before he goes to the next life, I will be really, really happy. But, you know, I wouldn't have liked John the 23rd. Not John the 23rd, God help me, no. I wouldn't have liked Julius III either. But John the 12th, Benedict the 9th, there are a lot of them I wouldn't have liked. But it's not dependent on me.
My 2 cents to the initial complaint, perhaps, is, if you want us to complain more about the church all the time, my reaction is why? There are plenty of other content creators out there who react to all these problems in the church consistently. I mean, we know who these people are. Church Militant, Taylor Marshall, 50 other podcasts. Why do you want us to be one of 50? I mean, isn't that enough, personally?
Yeah, I mean, there should be enough outrage to go around.
Right.
And the other thing too, frankly, what does being angry all the time accomplish? Let's say, I get on here and I say, Pope Francis is latest. I can't believe he said that on the airplane. How could the man be so stupid? What have I accomplished?
Yeah.
Is it going to stop Pope Francis from doing what he's doing? No. Is it going to improve things at all? No. Is it going to help anybody towards sainthood, including myself? No. It's not.
That is a question that I've been wrestling with. How do we get people to do things, and do we need people to feel strong emotions, anger, fear, in order to get them to do things? And also, even if we get people to feel these strong emotions, what are they really doing?
Well, very, very often those strong emotions, this will sound strange, sometimes they can drive action, but very often there's substitutes for action.
Yeah, I was wondering that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing where, something really annoys me, so I get on Facebook and I'll just blast away, and I feel better and I can go back to my everyday life as though I've done something. Well, I mean, I've shared my views with Facebook, and as any of my Facebook friends know, I do that quite a bit. But what has it accomplished, really? Most of my Facebook friends agree with me, and those who don't will say something unpleasant in response, which I'll probably hide so that other of my Facebook friends don't jump all over them. If I say the Catholic Church is the one true church, And one of my non-Catholic friends writes, well, that's what you papists always say, but it's not true. I'm going to hide that quicker than a wink, because I know the guy will be the target of an online lynch mob. And I have no desire to host that on any of my threads.
Why not?
Why? Would you like a brawl breaking out in your living room amongst your guests?
Why shouldn't Catholics do cancel culture? We've established that the main value of a human being is what they can, how coercive they can be.
Oh, well, that takes care of that. Well, to be honest with you, I would not mind Catholics using cancel culture on one condition: that they use it to cancel the more powerful. In other words, the reason why cancel culture works is because those who are doing so at the behest of those who matter. With us to cancel anybody, they're not that big a deal. We're soreheads. They wrote us off anyway. I mean, I did write up my woke list, and certainly if you want to go ahead and cancel those guys, you go right ahead. Cancel each and every one of them. Good luck with that. I'm canceling Harvard. I will never look at anything to do with Harvard ever again. Okay. That's nice.
All right. I think we've broken a record. We're at like the 45-minute mark, and we haven't even gotten to the questions or the memes.
Oh, heavens. Let's move.
Okay, so sorry, but first things first, shameless promotion. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. The button's at the bottom right corner of your screen. We need to hit 10K subscribers. Many fans have continually said our channel is criminally undersubscribed. I could not agree more. We are like the best YouTube channel in the world for under 10K subscribers. Absolutely, yes. Yeah. So also become a patron. We're mostly asking questions from patrons right now on the show because we have so many. But if you're not a patron, sometimes when we do a catch-up episode, I'll pluck questions from that are submitted through the website form. So please send them through that form, not through Twitter, not through Facebook, not through YouTube comments. Please do it on the form on the website. Okay. Also, benefits of becoming a patron: over 30 hours of exclusive video. We just did another pre-show that was over an hour long.
Yep, that's for sure. I remember it wasn't very long ago.
Yeah.
It's like it was just an hour
a moment ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you just can't get enough Charles, become a patron. Okay, let's see here. Time for the memes. Memes of production.
Nationalize the memes of production.
For the common good. Workers of the world unite.
Well,
not that. That's a
arise, ye memesters of the world.
All right. Let's see here.
And this is good because you're going to be seeing this on Labor Day.
Right. That's true. All right. All right, first one. Oh, this was such a great one. Boys in the first century. They have arrested the Lord to crucify him. What do? Run! Girls in the first century. They have arrested the Lord to crucify him. We should stay close. Yes, we shall follow him to the end. Take note of where they lay him, and return after the Sabbath to anoint his pure body. Wow.
Well, guys, I got to admit that kind of cuts into the gut.
But a lot of people, a lot of men have tried to defend and said, well, boy, they really threw St. John under the bus on this one. Which is kind of true, but also, there were 12 apostles, and the most beloved, if everyone runs other than the most beloved, that's not a great track record.
Yeah, including the boss.
Yeah. So
The head of the
especially.
apostles.
But,
Yeah. So, all right.
All right. Next meme from EWTN. I think EWTN. So this is a priest. He didn't actually say this. This is a meme. So he says, chicken tenders, an affront to God. Removing the bone teaches children food comes from man and not from our heavenly Father.
Well, that is kind of a Catholic Amish approach to things. It's true. I mean, I can imagine some people I've known saying that.
I see this sort of methodology in trad. I think it hits pretty close to home.
It's sometimes.
Amish, yeah, it is a little, yeah.
A little close.
Okay, so that was pretty good. Last one, so we received this last one. This was a super chat comment when I posted the premiere of our special episode. And I promised Luke I'd show this on our episode. So he says, I can't wait to move up a level in Oswald's organization. I just have to sell 50 cases of Juice Cleanse.
Well, at least he understands that Oswald is a con artist. And that it's basically a Ponzi scheme.
I don't think
pyramid club.
Wait, he didn't say that at all. He can't wait to move up a level.
Yeah, it's like Amway or Scamway, as we used to call it. That's all Oswald's got going. I've told you that.
Oswald is offering opportunity. What do you have against opportunity to make money?
If it were real, I mean, listen, if someone sells you the Golden Gate Bridge, trust me, there's an opportunity there, all right, for the guy who sells it to you. Oswald is a shameless hack and con artist. He was that way when we were kids. He was that way when we were young men. Nothing has changed. The guy has dogged my steps my entire career, and the fact that he shamelessly, and I add this advisedly, shamelessly pushes his way now into the Templar House organization. I can't shed the guy. He's like a barnacle on my career.
You could
it's
learn.
Always been this way. I write what was a fairly well-known and multi-anthologized essay on the Lord of the Rings through Catholic eyes. So what does he do? Jacqueline Suzanne as a Catholic ethicist. Jacqueline Suzanne, give me strength. You mean the Valley of the Dolls woman? And he points up to her as some. No, I don't see why people give him the time of day, but he's always there.
One of the sad truths in the publishing world is it's not always what you write on, Charles, or how good of a writer you are. It's how well you market yourself. And Oswald's marketing is second to none right now.
Oh, okay. I'll say he was on the Jerry Springer show, with arguing over wife or girlfriend number 5 or something. And he takes he takes that opportunity to talk about some product or other he was pushing. I couldn't believe it. It was shameless enough he was on the Springer show anyway. And nobody seems to catch on. People have accused me of wanting to air his dirty laundry. He does it himself and gets paid for it. I don't air that man's dirty laundry. You can smell it a mile away. You don't need to air it.
You begrudging him for reaching millions of people? I wish you could do that, Charles. We're stuck at what, a little under 9,000 subscribers. Maybe I should bring Oswald on the show.
See, this is what he's angling for. But I know that you have too much integrity. You would not sell what your family has worked so hard for so many decades to build. And sometimes rubbed out the opposition to make sure. You would not sell that rich heritage down the drain to a thieving, conniving schnook like Oswald Dupree. Right, you wouldn't do it. You're better than that. You're too good for that.
All right, we're going to start the questions. The first question relates to what we're talking about from Bobby. As a humble gardener at the Tumbler House estate, I know my place, but I got to speak up. It's my job to keep the front hedges trimmed and to occasionally work in the elusive meditation garden. To my surprise, I saw a Mr. Oswald Dupree in the meditation garden. Seems Tumbler House has a new favorite.
What was he doing in the meditation garden?
Well, look it.
Now, hold on. Look. I get in there on sufferance. What in God's name was that Tom Jones wannabe? What in God's name were you doing letting him into the meditation garden?
Okay, a number of our board of directors were in a tough spot. They needed to self-isolate. They needed someplace safe. So he did some fundraising, got him a nice safe spot in the Bahamas.
Yeah, I'll bet. Chiseled out of some widow in Miami, I'm sure. That is shameless. That is shameless. Why? You know what? Do me a favor. Send him to the 13th floor and see what happens. If he wants to hang around the Tumble House Tower, that's where he belongs.
Wow, Charles, you're just talking about shooting cows, and then you're telling me to send Oswald to the 13th floor. Wouldn't that be shooting the cow?
No, it wouldn't be. He'd probably charm his way into whatever lives in the 13th floor. In fact, he'd probably end up as Cthulhu's best bud or whatever it is, wrapped around with tentacles and big kisses on his cheek. Big Cthulhu-like, disgusting. Ugh. Anyway, no, I think I really, this is very upsetting.
Okay.
I think if you want to see Tumblr House descend to the level of someplace like Omega Publishing, you go ahead.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is your chance to bail out Charles out of a tough spot here. If you want him to rise to the upper echelon of Tumblr House, buy his books. Buy his books. See, because that's how this is a meritocracy. You see?
If that were the case, Oswald Dupree would get nowhere near the Tumblr House Tower.
That's not fair.
It's true.
That's not.
That is a shyster. And you notice that you're not willing to offer his books under the Tumblr House name, so even you know what a.
It's different branding, different areas, different topics.
Oh, I'll say it's different branding. My personal favorite of all of his titles, my personal favorite is "Buy This Book and Get Rich."
A totally different topic, right?
Yeah, I'll say.
I mean,
I'll say, but you see how shameless that is. Buy this book and get rich, 100% guaranteed. Who guarantees it? I looked through that bloody thing to find out the terms of the guarantee. There's no guarantee. He just says it. And his ideas are utterly stupid.
Have you tried them?
Of course I've tried them. That's why I know they're stupid. I know they don't work. I've tried them. I mean, now, mind you, some people, I admit, have benefited from them. I mean, there's a whole chapter on racial appropriation and claiming to be an ethnicity you aren't.
There's some truth to that, I think.
Well, yeah, it just didn't work for me.
What did you? Wait a minute. What did you try? Whoa.
Oh, well, I tried to be Korean.
You tried to be Korean.
It didn't work very well. Partly because it was in Japan. And that's how I can tell you that the stuff doesn't work at all, because it didn't work for me. Oh, and the thing about what does he call it? Panhandling with a purpose? No. How anybody could look at that double knit suit, those Cuban heels, and if I struck a match within 10 feet of that guy, he'd go up in flames from those double knits. You know that? He'd just poof, he'd be gone.
Now, let's stay civil.
I'll stay civil, all right. I'm going to throw down this gauntlet. The next time I'm home, when I come to the tower, I don't want that creature anywhere inside. I cannot be controlled. If he's there, there will be blood, and it won't be mine.
Whoa.
I am tired of it. I don't need this guff. I haven't lived 60 years to his lousy 59 to be put through this.
All right, Charles. Well, we'll see what we can do.
When I was president of the chess club in school, he had to be president of the checkers club because it's easier. How could I?
Checkers is more accessible.
Yeah, well, that's true of his entire life. It's more accessible, considering the number of times he's been divorced. Is extremely accessible. At least we have the same.
There's something to be learned from that, no?
Yeah, there is. We have the same number of children.
What?
But I have no children. Neither does he. I've never been married. He's been married 7 times. So
that's. I'm glad you said that you've never been married, because I checked the analytics of the website. There's like hundreds of people who are actually searching Charles Coulombe wife.
Well, there were a couple possibilities. They married other people. I won't say who.
Okay.
I won't say who they married. Let's just say he didn't stick with them long. I hope they're happy with what they got. I had a much better fashion sense than he did back then anyway, and they didn't, but if you prefer a blonde fro, now gray, of course, then have at it.
Okay, we'll get into the questions. I'll spare you, Charles.
All right.
First question's from me.
I thought you were going to spare me.
Oh, sorry, Charles. Nope. No, this is a pretty easy question, probably for you. So I was reading the liturgical year.
Wait. Are you a patron? Are you a patron, or are you a regular client, regular customer, regular viewer?
No, I just own the place. That's all.
Yeah, that wasn't my question. I don't recall asking that. What I asked was if you were a patron or a regular viewer. I don't recall asking a third or fourth or fifth.
Okay, given the weird context of the question, I'm a regular viewer.
I see. So in other words, you're putting in your question, and some paying patrons question was put out to accommodate you. Okay, that's fine.
Oh, I pay in different ways, Charles. All right.
Father of us all. All right, fine. Ask your question. I'll try to answer it if I've got any brains left.
All right. So I was reading liturgical year, and St. Giles was September 1st. So he was a hermit who, against his will, became an abbot of a monastery out of holy obedience.
True.
When did the church impose the discipline of daily mass, where if you fail to go to mass, it's a mortal sin? I have a special place in my heart for the hermits, like St. Anthony of the Desert, St. Paul the Hermit, and St. Giles. But it just occurred to me that if you're a hermit who isn't a priest, then you aren't receiving the Eucharist. These guys sought out to be hermits when, if they lived in a town, they might be able to receive the Eucharist. How do you sort out your priorities like that? A life of solitude and prayer, or the sacraments?
Usually, except for the very early days, you didn't have to, because normally a hermit would be under the protection, quote unquote, of some monastery. And what that meant is that the monks of that particular abbey would bring him the sacraments. So,
I see.
Even today, it's an interesting story. But do you remember Sister? Oh golly, she's an art expert. She used to be on PBS.
A nun?
Yes.
I'm not familiar.
Gosh, I can't think of her name. Anyway, she was on PBS. She was actually quite a funny-looking lady, actually, full habit. But she was actually a hermitess under the protection of a Carmelite monastery in England.
Yeah, I don't know what hermit means nowadays. We've got a hermit priest that I've met up in Camarillo, who says Latin Mass. Father Michael, St. Margaret Mary Church, I think, says the Tridentine. He's a hermit, he said. I was talking to him. So I don't even know what hermit means anymore.
Well, normally it still means what it did mean. In other words, that the person is alone. But hermits, sometimes if they got a reputation for holiness, people would start coming to them, which made them complain sometimes. There's a hermit in the Netherlands who lives in the far northern part of the Netherlands, a very Protestant area. But he says the Tridentine Mass. He has a little chapel in the middle of nowhere, but there's an endless stream of visitors.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, he actually would prefer to have fewer visitors, but in that part of the Netherlands, it's hard enough to get to any kind of Mass, let alone the Tridentine Mass.
Okay. Next few questions are from Diego. While my great friend introduced me, seriously anyway, to monarchy, the points Charles makes really solidify their seriousness in political discussion or even implementation in reality. However, throughout history, one area that continues to baffle me is the nobility. What is it? How did it come to be, both in antiquity, medieval, and modern times? What does it mean to be a noble? Have there ever been peasants who would achieve greatness outside of the church? For example, saints. I come from a lower class, and since Charles has met the upper echelons, would really appreciate a detailed answer, since I highly doubt I'll meet them.
Well, it's like this. The nobility historically has developed as a class directly assisting the monarch in administration of the realm, in fighting. The knights of Europe, for instance, the knighthood was actually in European circles the foundation of nobility, of the European nobility. Landowning became part of it, feudalism. As the structure of the Carolingian Empire broke down, the local counts and dukes and so forth took on more and more of the responsibilities of the sovereign. And then later on, as the modern state developed and as a civil service developed, another sort of nobility was created to help the king in administering the state. In France, these were called respectively the nobility of the sword and the nobility of the robe. The nobility of the sword descended from the old medieval fighting men. The nobility of the robe were newer people whose forebears had been bureaucrats and so on. And as time went on, in many monarchies, titles of nobility were given to rising industrialists, soldiers who made a name for themselves, politicians, various people who helped make charity people, philanthropists and so on, people who helped make society run. In fact, the odd thing is that in those countries that were monarchies and are now republics, the nobility is much more exclusive than it is in monarchies that remain. And the reason is that traditionally, individuals, whatever their background, if they made a splash, they did something extraordinary, they would very often be made noblemen and pulled into the class. Remember, there's always a certain number of noble families going extinct. And contrariwise, in those days and ways, you'd have new blood brought in on the basis of achievement, of service to the king or the emperor. But in a republic, they don't make any more new noblemen. So the nobility goes from being a class of sorts to being a caste that you can't get into because there's no monarch to get you into it. So the French and the Austrian nobility, for instance, are much more exclusive than the Belgian or the Swedish or the Dutch.
Okay. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, that seems very limiting. I mean, is it good to be that exclusive where you're literally a dying breed? Yeah.
It's not good at all.
Yeah.
It's not good at all. It doesn't do anyone any good. And of course, the other thing is that they've always attempted always in republics, and now to a great degree in these monarchies, which have become sort of crowned republics, to minimize the influence and so on of the nobility. And that's not a good thing, because these are people whose families and lives and history and so forth are tied up with the history of the country, on the one hand, or contrary-wise, people of ability who have shown sufficient loyalty to the monarch and to the country to deserve the reward of a title. And that's completely lost to the Republic.
Right. Also, studying history, I've come to notice that a lot of people who've changed history are of noble blood. For example, Alexander the Great, Plato, Augustus Caesar, our blessed Lord and Savior, Trajan, Hadrian, Constantine the Great, Clovis I, Don Pelayo, Godfrey of Bouillon, William the Conqueror, St. Thomas Aquinas, Charles I of Spain, and Charles V of Germany, Don Juan de Austria, Otto von Bismarck, and several popes. I am aware of other classes rising from poverty to some sort of fame and recognition. For me, it's Don Francisco Pizarro. But is there really any reason as to why the more prominent can make history?
Just because they're in a position to. But you've got to bear in mind that behind every quote-unquote prominent person making history, there are a ton of other people whom you never hear about. Everyone plays their part. I mean, the tutors, that is to say, the educators of all of those people you spoke of, they played a huge part in what their students did. And similarly, all of these, well, most of them anyway, commanded men in battle or commanded their subjects in peacetime. And those subjects, too, at their ruler's behest or at their leader's behest, made history. We're just not aware of them. My old father used to say, he had sort of a parable he would tell about this very wealthy Catholic who died and went to the heavenly gates. Now, mind you, when he was alive, this fellow led a very moral life. Only one wife, never cheated on her, didn't embezzle, didn't cheat at business. Was a decent fellow. But he gave lots and lots of money for churches and schools and hospitals and libraries and so forth to be built. So he dies, and he goes to the pearly gates, and St. Peter looks over the paperwork, and he says, well, you're in. He said, oh, that's great. Let me ask you, what was my biggest accomplishment on earth? Was it the churches I built? They were nice. We appreciate them. The schools? Oh, very good. Very good. The libraries, the hospitals, all wonderful, all received with many thanks. Well, you're leaving something out. What was my greatest single achievement on earth? St. Peter says, you really want to know? He says, yes, I wouldn't ask you if I didn't want to know. All right, I'll tell you. The other stuff was great, and as I told you, we really appreciated it. But your biggest single accomplishment was when you were 13 years old and you were standing on the corner of Hollywood and Vine. Do you remember? And this car pulled up, and the guy rolled down the window, and he said, hey, kid, do you know how to get to Sunset and Wilcox? And you told him. And he got there just when he was supposed to at the right time. And everything worked out the way it was. That whole scenario, it was perfect. And it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't given him the right direction at the right time. That was your greatest single accomplishment on planet Earth. We're all part of a huge tapestry, you see. And we don't know this side of the grave what part we play. We don't know who we inspire or who we discourage. We don't really know the good we do nor the evil. So everyone has their part to play.
Yeah, it reminds me of two people in power who have been sort of influenced in a negative way and sort of turned them into monsters. One is, if I'm not mistaken, Vlad the Impaler.
Ah, yes.
Which is a sad story. And then I believe the other is the current Philippines president.
Yes.
Abused by a priest, and so now he's paying
Not
it forward.
Not only abused by a priest, but abused by a priest I knew.
Wait, oh, I see.
Father Mark Feeney, S.J. Not Feeney, gosh. Father Mark Falvey, S.J.
S.J.
Yeah, he was a Jesuit. And my brother and I, we couldn't help ourselves because we both knew Father Falvey when we were kids. My brother's comment was, he molested a nation.
That's such... I mean, it's kind of funny in a sense, but it's also, like, tragic and horrible underneath it all.
All at the same time, yes, I know. You may have noticed my family jokes are very like that.
Yes, they are.
Funny in one sense, but horrible and tragic in another.
All right. Next question from Diego. What was pilgrimage like back in the Dark Ages, the 500s to 900s, and Middle Ages? What were the major routes taken? Who would go on pilgrimages? What would one do to prepare for a pilgrimage? And what would one experience once on foot? What would occur when they would arrive at the site, and what sort of experience would one have? I don't think that pilgrimages are necessary for one's salvation. Correct me if I'm wrong. Nonetheless, are they good for one's soul?
As with so much these days, we'll start with the last question first. Yes, they are good for one's soul. They're not necessary for salvation, but they sure help. And the reason is because not only are there graces from going to the particular place you're going to, but getting there and the difficulties and privations that you go through can be offered up. So, at the time of during the Middle Ages, there were literally shrines everywhere, and there still are in most of Catholic Europe. But the four major shrines were the Holy Land, Jerusalem, and Bethlehem and Nazareth and so forth, Rome, Compostela in Spain, which is the tomb of the Apostle St. James, and in England, Canterbury Cathedral and the shrine of St. Thomas a Becket. Hence the Canterbury Tales, told by Canterbury pilgrims. What was it like? Well, it was tough because, of course, travel in those days was much less sure and certain than it had been under the Romans. There were pilgrims' guides, if you could read. If not, pilgrims told stories. You traveled overland unless you had to take a ship. If you didn't have money, then your lodging, you probably slept out of doors. If you did have money, it was still pretty dangerous because there were robbers and all that. Normally, they were supposed to leave the pilgrims alone, but that didn't always work. You'd have a pilgrim staff, and you'd have a sign, depending on what shrine you were going to tell all and sundry that you were a pilgrim and you should be left alone. But again, not all robbers were that pious. Some were. There were robbers in the Middle Ages who made a point of not attacking pilgrims. Of course...
Didn't the Crusades start because the Muslims were killing pilgrims?
Correct. And if it was the Holy Land you were going to, it was a long trip, whether you went by land or by sea. Lots and lots of dangers, and always a good chance if you went on pilgrimage that you wouldn't come back.
Really?
Oh yeah, and it didn't just have to be a question of being killed by a robber or Muslims. You might starve to death. If you couldn't find food, you ran out of money, and you had no means of getting food. You might get lost. Because a lot of these routes went through forests and so on. You might catch some illness along the way and die. And there are a number of saints who actually were pilgrims who died on the way at a local spot. You're coming from some faraway place. you're headed to Rome or you're headed to Compostela or the Holy Land, wherever you're going, you stop at an inn, and then you take sick, and you die. And it's a holy death. The priest comes and all that, because it gives us the last rites. You never made it to where you were going, or you never made it back home if you were coming back. But very often the local people would venerate you as a saint because you died for the sake of the pilgrimage.
Wow. That's far beyond, modern day recreational pilgrimages.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was heavy duty when you went on pilgrimage. And a lot of people would sell everything they had to finance the trip.
It's like a lifestyle. It's like a life choice, like the choice to be a hermit or the choice to be a pilgrim. Sounds like It's on that level.
It was. It very definitely was. And of course, if you did manage to get there and back again, you would be changed. I mean, the majority of people in the Middle Ages did not leave their immediate neighborhoods. So you would see things you had never seen before. Places and people and so forth. And then you'd come back and, if you made it in one piece, you'd tell the story of your adventures on the way to Compostela or wherever you'd gone. It was an amazing thing.
Let's get into the demographics, because I can't picture.
I couldn't tell you what percentage went on pilgrimage.
Because it can't be family men, obviously, right? Because, they're going
Not
to have a
usually.
duty to the family. I can only picture able-bodied young men being able to handle all of this.
Sometimes elderly people would go, sometimes families would go. But there was always a better than 50% chance they wouldn't get back.
Better than 50-50?
Well, there's so many things that could kill you. I mean, you got to remember that one of the leading causes of death in our country before 1900 was tetanus. You cut yourself on something dirty, you catch tetanus, and it kills you. In the days before antibiotics, death was waiting around the corner for everybody.
It's hard to relate to. Going on it's really something. I'm trying to put myself there, but it's a whole other world where you decide to go on this trip and it's not recreation and you flip a coin and you might die.
Yeah, you might too.
Wow. That was a lot heavier answer than I had anticipated. Wow. Let me see. He asked a lot of questions here. So what were the major routes taken? Did we answer that? Or the Holy Land, Compostela?
Rome.
Okay. Let's see. What would one do to prepare for a pilgrimage?
Pray, go to Mass, and as I say, you might sell everything you had to have the funds to do it.
Wow. What about wealthy? Was it wealthy who would do this, or poor? I mean, it seems
if you were poor, you walked. If you had money, you rode.
Huh. Are there any famous pilgrim saints?
Oh, quite a few. I can't think of any right now, but there are quite a number. As I say, one of the things would be when a pilgrim died on the pilgrimage, he very often got venerated as a saint within short order.
I see. Okay. All right. Onward. Next question from I plucked from YouTube comment. This gentleman has the alias Mr. Matt, and he says, "My favorite podcast by a mile. Everything else seems fairly dull by comparison. Question for Charles: Can he answer? Can he answer it, and would he please do so?"
Someone who's paying attention, yes.
Someone, assuming there will be a Vatican III or another ecumenical council, what issues should be at the top of the agenda? Also, is Charles aware of any doctrinal developments that the Church may dogmatize within the next century or so?
Well, I would suppose that what they would want to look at would be the exact frontiers of the church, who's in, who's out. You know, this phrase, in full communion with the church, in partial communion, all that. That needs a lot of clarification. And so, too, the frontiers of the ordinary magisterium. When is it infallible, when not?
Yeah. It just makes me think of Vatican II, the people of God. I don't know if they define the people of God.
No.
It's very mysterious.
It's extremely mysterious, which is why definitions will definitely be a big part of the next council, I think.
Yeah. Okay. A bunch of questions from George. Charles sheds some light on the issue of whether Queen Elizabeth II is still technically and rightfully Queen of Ireland. I would be grateful. I have heard some people argue against her legitimacy in claiming such throne, and I was wondering whether Charles is in possession of any definitive and conclusive proof.
Well, it's like this. You can make the argument that Elizabeth II is the Queen of Ireland today, based on this. As you may know, when Ireland became independent as a dominion in 1922, it had a governor general and all that, just like Canada and Australia did. In 1932, after 10 years of saying that his conscience wouldn't allow him to take the oath of allegiance to the king, Eamon de Valera decided it would. And then having won the election in that year, he and his Fianna Fáil party took the oath to the king, and he became the Taoiseach of the Prime Minister. He immediately went to work undermining the Governor General, who was himself had been a great advocate of Irish independence and was an Ulsterman from Northern Ireland. Now, he was Catholic, but he was very, very keen on Ireland being reunited, and knowing the Ulster Scots as he did, knew that that would never happen unless they could trust the Irish, the Southern Irish, to keep treaties, to be trusted. So, De Valera managed to push him out of the office, put in this fellow called Donald Buckley, who didn't do anything and didn't do much. And then in 1936, there arose the abdication crisis when Edward VIII, who was king not only of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, but of Ireland, Canada, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. He abdicated because he was given to understand that there'd be no support for his marrying a twice divorced woman, Wallis Simpson. Well, the thing was that the dominions were independents, and the king was king of each of them separately. He was king of Australia, king of Canada, king of Ireland. So De Valera took the opportunity to rush through a ton of legislation, getting rid of the office of Governor General, establishing a presidency in Ireland without declaring a republic, and naming George VI as the person responsible for conducting Ireland's foreign affairs. That was called the External Relations Act. He didn't want to use the K word. But there's one thing he didn't do in all of that.
What?
He never accepted Edward VIII's abdication. Which means, legally speaking, Edward VIII remained King of Ireland, even though his brother was now responsible for the conduct of foreign affairs. Now, what that meant was during World War II, when Ireland was neutral, George VI was still considered the King of Ireland. So he was against the Germans and so forth as King of Great Britain, as King of Canada, King of Australia, King of New Zealand, King of South Africa. But he was neutral as King of Ireland. So, in 1949, Costello, the then Taoiseach, decided to end the relationship with the Crown by abolishing the Crown Relations Act, the External Relations Act. However, All that did was remove George VI as the person responsible, etc. At no point was ever a law passed making Ireland a republic. And so, legally speaking, Edward VIII remained King of Ireland until he died in 1972, at which point he was succeeded as Queen of Ireland by his daughter. By his niece, Elizabeth II.
There you go.
There you go.
Right. Could Charles give an account of how he came to receive a medal from Grand Duchess Maria Romanov?
He could.
And I'll speak for George. Could you please do so?
Oh, yes. All right, sure. Basically, I was invited to give a talk on Stolypin, the Russian Prime Minister, under Nicholas II, for his centennial in 2012 in San Francisco. And the lecture I gave was called Stolypin Through Western Eyes. He was a very important man, very big figure in Russian history. And so I pointed out how popular he'd been in the West and so forth. Well, the next thing I knew, in token of that speech and the support I gave to Russian historiography, Her Imperial Highness was good enough to bestow on me the medal commemorating the 500th anniversary of the ending of the Time of Troubles, which was a period in Russian history. So there it is.
Do you have your medal with you?
Yes.
Okay.
You want to see it?
Yeah.
Give me a minute.
Oh, look at that. What does that say? It's a little blurry. It's still zoomed in.
It's in Russian. It just says 400th anniversary of the ending of the Time of Troubles. So
very nice.
So
Charles.
Thank you. That was how I got that.
Okay. What does Charles think of the current state of legitimism in Russia?
Well, from what I hear, it's increasing. Certainly, the Grand Duchess and her son, who's now living there, incidentally, the Grand Duke George, the heir to the throne, now lives in Russia, in Moscow. It seems to be growing.
And can you explain what legitimism is, please?
Yeah, legitimism is the belief in a particular family's right to a throne. So, in other words, a French royalist supports the restoration of the king. But a legitimist wants the older line of the House of Bourbon restored, whereas an Orleanist wants the younger line made king. They're both royalist, but one's legitimist, one isn't. Well, similarly in Russia, the Grand Duchess is the only ranking member of the House of Romanov who, under the old marriage laws, is able to assume the throne, because all of the Grand Dukes after Nicholas II died married morganatically. So there are many princes Romanov running around, and a lot of them are very much opposed to the idea of the Grand Duchess becoming Tsarina, or her son becoming Tsar. Some of them believe it would better go to one of them. Some of them are actually against restoration at all. But when one Prince Romanov, I won't say who, declared that he was very much against monarchy returning in Russia, my immediate thought was, well, then why are you saying anything? The only reason why anyone would listen to you is because of your name. So if you're really a Republican, you just shut up. You'll close your mouth and you'll let things go on as they should without your influence.
Just like everyone else.
Yeah. It's like Harry and Princess Merkel.
Exactly like them. Okay. Next question is from Andrew. Because a renewed interest in reviving authentic masculinity, there are now, thankfully, no shortage of resources to help fathers raise their sons to be virtuous Catholic men. But what of their daughters? Morally, girls face innumerable horrors that our modern world has convinced them are harmless or even good, but nevertheless destroy their souls. What are some activities or traditions a father can do with his daughter to help raise her in feminine virtue?
Well, of course, there should always be a Marian element, and she should look on the Virgin Mary as as a role model, and also a lot of other female saints should be looked at. I'd recommend, in terms of books, I would recommend Father Lassance's Young Woman's Guide. I'd be very careful about the schooling, of course. And there's an organization which is sort of like the Girl Scouts. It was Protestant in origin, but there are a lot of Catholics who belong to it. It's called the American Heritage Girls. So you might look into that. And no, they don't sell copies of the magazine.
Okay. Yeah. You told him to look into feminine saints and women saints. Saint Therese of Lisieux is very popular. As a prominent member of the Knights of Columbus, we have a local branch of Carmelites over here, so they needed someone to bartend, and so I volunteered because they had the thing, because they released this new CD of their choir and their wonderful voices, and it was such a trip for me. It was all the young sisters, all the novices. They're the closest thing I've ever encountered to Saint Therese. They have this just youthful radiance, and I can't really describe it, because it would if you haven't seen it, it would be like describing the color red to a blind person. Let me just say that. It was like unbelievable. But it's funny, there's a certain juxtaposition, because all the young novices, obviously, they want to be like Saint Therese, and they're pretty darn close. But then all the old-timey nuns, all the old-timey sisters, they're very reminiscent of Mother Angelica. They've got sort of this sharpness to it, and they don't have this brightness, but they are so I don't know, at peace. I don't know how you would describe them. But
forthright, assertive.
I don't know, more pragmatic, and I don't know how to describe it. But they don't have the same shine. It's a very different type of holiness. Anyhow, it's really interesting. I really encourage people to encounter the sisters, brothers in the religious life. That's who are doing well, not some of those orders of nuns that have no habits. They're
but what do they make up for their lack of habits with being really annoying harridans?
Wait, what?
Like the chick at the Democratic National Convention, that nun.
It's just sad.
Susan from the parish council before she got married.
Those sisters are sad to me, because you've taken the religious life, but they're just so misled. They're so malformed. It's gross.
Yep, that it is.
I don't need to tell you. Out of all the people in the world, I don't need to tell you, because I'm sure I've heard your horror stories. Okay, we don't need.
And I have a lot of them. All right. Well, what's next?
All right. Last question for today. I know you're happy. It's been a long day today. All right. From Jacqueline. In anticipation of Charles's impending favorite holiday, Halloween, my question is based on the following passage in William Biersack's The Darkness Did Not. second book in the continuing saga of Father John Baptist, the cop-turned-priest, and Martin Feeney, his garden-turned-chronicler. Martin is chased by a dark presence to Elsa's sitting room in the House of Illusions. The room is named for the deceased Elsa, who, it is claimed, sometimes plays the piano in this room. Afterwards, Martin asks Father Baptist, quote, if Elsa's spirit might possibly be, stuck there. You said that a ghost is sometimes a soul in purgatory who has been allowed to visit the living in order to provide guidance, comfort, or aid, thereby expiating their temporal punishment in some way. End quote. Charles, please comment on the souls in purgatory being allowed to visit the living, and have you or anyone you know had this experience? Wow.
Well, it is getting close to Halloween. I suddenly feel the chill running up my spine. The jack-o'-lantern is coming out in me, but as we saw last time. But yeah, to answer your question, I don't know of anyone personally to whom this has happened. But I do know that there is a museum in Rome dedicated to artifacts for people who've returned from purgatory, asking for prayers and masses and so on. They're all the same sort of thing. Basically, the individual returnee will say, well, they'll believe this. They'll put their hand or making the sign of the cross or something, and burn an impression on cloth or a book or a table or something. These you'll see on exhibit there. There's a similar case and relic in the treasury of the Cathedral of Bratislava, which I've seen. Obviously, if you read Sir Sean Leslie's Ghost Book, you'll see examples of this sort as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I've
Well, it's interesting. So in Sean Leslie's Ghost Book, you have, as I like to say, you have sacrament-seeking ghosts and ghosts that are repulsed by the sacraments or demons. So in Sean Leslie's Ghost Book, you have mostly ghosts who are in it for themselves, so to speak. Like, you have a haunting of certain priests, and, the priests eventually find this hidden cache of a priest who died but didn't say a mass for a certain person, and so then the priest says the mass, and then the ghost goes away. So the ghost was sort of haunting the place to get the mass said for himself.
Yeah.
What are there examples of ghosts who are providing comfort or aid to people? This is something new.
Well, I mean, they again, we don't know the rules. In the immortal words of M.R. James, depend upon it, these things happen, but we do not know the rules. We don't. There's a very famous story surrounding the property called Priest's Field in West Virginia, the story of the Wizard's Clip, which I think I've told before on this show, about this family in the 1820s, I guess. A young man came to them because their farm was on the main road to Martinsburg, West Virginia then. Well, the kid, he was a young man, he was Catholic apparently. They gave him dinner, he was going to overnight, but he took sick. And he begged them to get him a priest because he realized he was dying. They wouldn't do it, so he died. And they buried him. And from that time on, it was horrible. Their clothes all got cut, hence the name, the Wizard's Clip. Things flew through the air, voices were heard. They brought several, again, demanding that they bring a priest. They brought several Protestant ministers of different denominations who literally got thrown out of the house. And finally, Father Demetrius Gallitzin, the famous pioneer priest, investigated the occurrence for Bishop Carroll in Baltimore. And he offered he blessed the house, offered a mass for the repose of the soul of the kid, and the phenomenon stopped. But every member of that family converted to Catholicism, and when the last one of them died, maybe even 100 years later, a long time later, he left the property to the church, and it now has it as a retreat center for priests in West Virginia. It's called Priest's Field. But there you've got a combination of things, because in a sense, by showing them that the Catholic Church was the true one, he brought that family comfort, all right, despite driving them crazy with terror.
It's interesting. So, okay, well, so the church suffering can help the living?
They sure can. They could pray for us. They can't pray for themselves, but they could pray for us. And one of the things, frankly, I learned from a friend many years ago, and I use it myself now and then when I don't have an alarm clock, and I've never known it to fail, is to say a prayer to the holy souls that they'll wake me up at the right time the next morning. They're really good at that.
My mom does that, but she relies on her guardian angel.
Same.
Yeah, same.
But praying for the holy souls. The missionaries of the missionaries of the Sacred Heart have a book that you can get online called Daily Pilgrimage to Purgatory for the Holy Souls, which is basically a novena of prayers for them. And I mean, there's a lot you could do for the holy souls. And, of course, we have All Hallows Tide coming up.
You excited?
Always.
You gonna do some souling?
No. I'll be lucky if I'm allowed out the way things are going around here. But I will wait with interest to see what happens in LA on Halloween. But before Halloween, we have a lot of other things coming up, which I should mention. They're going to be seeing this on Labor Day, which means the official end of summer. You won't know it in LA, where you may have the heat until Halloween or Thanksgiving. Sometimes we've had warm Christmases, which is annoying. There's something about a warm Christmas that it's just not fun. But nevertheless, as September goes on, you'll have Our Lady's Nativity on September the 8th. And then Michaelmas Day, September 29th. Yay! Michaelmas. Yay! I love Michaelmas. I love the Archangel Michael. And, celebrate the angels. Do it. And then, of course, October. Dear October will come along. And you might begin to feel the heat let go of LA a little bit. But certainly the Halloween decorations will be everywhere. And by that time in the stores, at least the stores that you can go into. And the Christmas decorations will appear before Thanksgiving. So you have this Nightmare Before Christmas deal going just before Halloween. And then the day itself, All Saints, All Souls. And then November 11th, Martinmas, Remembrance Day, Veterans Day. So you can eat a goose, drink some Martin's wine, and wear a red poppy in honor of the gallant dead. And then will come Thanksgiving. Yes, Thanksgiving. And then, yes, the Feast of St. Andrew. You can get your Scot on, wear a kilt, eat a haggis, drink some scotch. And Advent begins. And Christmas is coming. So, a lot to look forward to. The last Sunday in October, the Feast of Christ the King.
Okay.
And that, remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you remember nothing else, Christ is still King. Christ is always King. Christ shall always be King. But I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Well, this is Labor Day. It must be Monday.
That's right.
But if it's Monday,
it's off the menu.
And the soul you save?
may be your own.
Void where prohibited. Now
Nope.
while supplies last.
No CODs. Limited time offer. Operator standing by. Act now. Satisfaction guaranteed.
Not an actor. God bless everybody.